And I do think women can be a little better at exchanging information among each other. I do think that's still something we don't do as well because we're all busy having children, running our families. The camaraderie of man that they've created over the years in this industry is just insane. We can't compete with that. That said, if we're going to be taking some share and market share in that space, that's an element where it's very important to focus. And I think we are doing that, but it could be better in my view.
Welcome to Knowing Me, Knowing You, the podcast for the future of wealth management. Thanks for being here. I'm Marla Sofer. Money is a tool. It empowers people. Let's dive into how technology is personalizing advice, strengthening connections, and creating lasting impact. If you're an advisor looking to differentiate, a fintech leader shaping the next wave, or a client ready to take control of your financial future, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hi, and today we are speaking with Tatiana Sunik, a seasoned financial advisor with nearly 20 years in the wealth management industry. Tatiana is a fiduciary advisor and financial planner with Forum Financial LP, a boutique advisory firm managing over $9 billion in assets. As a certified financial planner, she understands her clients' concerns and guides them, focusing on clarity and long-term structure. She's spent more than 20 years helping individuals and families navigate financial planning, and she's an advisor at Forum Financial Management and the founder of Hera Financial, a life transition-focused financial consulting firm that helps clients, primarily women, through some of life's most complex and emotional transitions. Her mission is to empower women to achieve financial independence, especially those that are working through divorce. She is a certified divorce financial analyst and a passionate advocate for holistic planning that puts life first and numbers second. We're going to talk about what it really takes to find the right advisory home and what the industry still gets wrong when it comes to serving women and how her work with divorce clients is helping shape the future of wealth management. Tatiana, welcome to the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast.
Hello. Thank you for a wonderful introduction. That was very comprehensive. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course. I'm so happy you're here. We had a really great introduction a couple of weeks ago, maybe even a couple of months ago. And I really was excited to bring you on the podcast for a couple of reasons. One is your work with divorcees and women that are going through transition. And two is your own life transition. And I know you're very open and candid. You talk about your own story, not only your transition personally, but also professionally. You kind of were at a firm, you went to another firm. So I'm really happy and excited to get to that you're here and to get into some of those guts of your own journey in wealth management. But we always start off with the same question here at the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast. And that is, what is exciting to you about the moment that we're in right now related to the future of wealth management?
Well, I think a lot of the industry is changing. And I think a lot of times there is a resistance to change, but I think a lot of times it's kind of having your client to understand what is truly wealth advising is and differentiate this from just a piece of it, wealth management. And that fiduciary aspect, the comprehensive financial planning, that is to make sure your client understands that adding alpha and earning more in your portfolio is not just the returns. It's much bigger picture, just to take a step back and really realize what is that holistic financial planning is. And I think that's becoming more and more prominent in the industry. So I am excited for the fact that more people are going to get a quality advice versus just being so focused on the returns.
Fantastic. As we were kind of just getting kicked into this conversation and you were joining the platform here to record our podcast, you were mentioning that there's just a lot of transitions going on. You've got a lot of women that are reaching out. What are you seeing in the market right now?
When you say market, financial market or market?
No. Like just the market of individuals seeking financial support and wealth management and life transitions. Are you seeing just maybe because of do you think it's something going on? Is it politics? Is it what's happening in the economy? Do you feel that there's kind of a lot more divorces happening, or what are you seeing?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm also sort of asking myself that question, what I see and why I see that. And at times I try to make sense. And this is really obviously in my view, just to full disclosure. I do think that there is a big movement to empower women and to really make sure women pay attention to their finances. And I think over a long time, women were targeted by products, by insurance industry, by put money, all of your money in S&P 500, like all these sort of notions that are, they maybe made some moves and had burn on them. There's element of them being a bit jaded when it comes to the comprehensive financial advice. And I often have to undo that stepping into relationships. That said, I think with the rate of a divorce, which is quite frankly was high up like maybe a year ago, and people say, oh, it's going down. Well, it's not really going down. What's happening is there is a lot of people that are not divorcing because of the way the economy is. There's a lot of changes politically and a lot of changes in the infrastructure of kind of like how we're living our lives in general. And, the real estate market is very interesting, very distorted. So their majority of, and the big part of their net worth often is home too, right? So they're sort of sitting on the sidelines this year and figuring out, am I going to pull the trigger or maybe I'll wait out a year? So as a result, we see a decline in divorce rate a little bit. That said, it would be interesting to see what's going to happen next year. I also see that women are earning more. They are getting through the rails, even though I think corporate world has not been set up for them, but they're killing it. And as a result, they're starting to pay a little more attention to their personal finance. They want to be in charge of that. They also see a lot of divorce rates, quite frankly, and maybe their friends. I think that's my view. I think it's affecting people. It's sort of like that whiplash effect that, you see how people scrambling and trying to learn and paying attention to their finances in the middle of crisis. It doesn't work, right? You want to make sure you are ahead of the curve. And when you step into this type of life change, you are a little bit having your ducks in a row. So I think all of that maybe brings that multiple awareness. And there's also a generation of women that are getting older who had grown up in divorced families. And they do see how their mothers are struggling at the end, right? Because if we look at the generation, the baby boomers are aging and their children are getting older. I think there is also element where I get young women in my practice coming to me at 25. I want a full-blown financial plan where there is not much room there yet because they're so young. There's some things can be done, but like why you're asking questions, why are you seeking financial plan at such a young age? And they say, well, I've grown up in light of my mother. I don't want to be my mother at the end of the year. So there's many, many parts there.
I love how you talked about, we were sold products. A lot of women are kind of just thrown products, and you're taking a very different approach, understanding what's going on in your life. You're looking more at solutioning than selling. You're looking at really trying to understand what is happening, what brought you here, how do I help you get your ducks in a row so we can plan for the future together. So you have been working with women for a long time. You've also yourself been a female advisor in an industry that is still, there's more women coming into it, but it's still pretty male dominated. What challenges do you see as it relates to your experience as a female advisor? What do you think that the industry doesn't talk about enough?
Oh, that's a lot to unpack. Let's kind of go on the big picture. Well, first of all, industry wise, if we look at the statistics, the 23% of CFP financials are women. And if you actually look into the actual ratio, how many of these individuals are financial advisors, then we go in even in the lower statistics. That's from, I think, based on 2024. So it's a little old, but
on like having their FINRA license, their Series 7. So they might be a CFP, but they might not have their Series 7 and their FINRA ability to be an advisor.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm talking just from the standpoint being a CFP, that sort of grants you certified financial planner, that holistic training, that's the background I come from. So my point is there's only probably truly 17% of CFPs out there that are financial advisors, right? So what does that mean? That means about more than 80% of the time, women are getting advice from who? Someone who's never worked in their shoes, never walked in their shoes, had never had those difficulties that women facing, has never climbed corporate ladder while being a caretaker of their parents or their children, right? All these elements where the empathy is so important. And I think us as a woman being also, single mom, that brings me that element of empathy with my clients that I think not often is dominated in the male world. And I think the challenges that women face is still sort of getting that mentorship. I think perhaps it's a lot of that male type of mentorship, because I think as a woman, I do things a little bit different. Although I had some great male mentorships that have really helped me to see certain things, which I still molded to really my own way. But, having those individuals mentor you is very important. And I do think in the way being in New York, it's considered to be a mecca of finance. A lot of it is focused on investments, and a lot of it's still driven, very investment focused, where, Vanguard came out with a study where having financial advisor consistently over the years, discipline that learning that behavior finance, not pulling the trigger when it's not necessary, right? Learning how to have your spending, the budgeting, the saving, very tax efficient, all of that advisor brings to the table consistently, right? Consistency is the key in anything, like workout, having your money being managed as well. That actually adds more alpha. Well, let me just say not more alpha. I think they quantify it as being like an average 3% on top. And you would never think that, right? Like, how is this not quantifiable way really adds something to it? But it is about the discipline and having the professional advice. And I often say professional advice for people who have complexities financially, it's not a luxury. It's an upgrade to really match your complexity where you are and address it in the right way. So if I'm answering this correctly, I would say women truly being focused on that holistic approach where they want to, and not just be someone who is selling the products, is still sort of a shift. And I do think women can be a little better at exchanging information among each other. I do think that's still something we don't do as well because we're all busy having children, running our families. The camaraderie of man that they've created over the years in this industry is just insane. We can't compete with that. That said, if we're going to be taking some share and market share in that space, that's an element where it's very important to focus. And I think we are doing that, but it could be better in my view.
Two things. I actually have interviewed here on the podcast a couple of men who have totally centered their entire practice around women as well. They see the opportunity, and you're right. There may be a level of different empathy and not having been in their shoes before. And then two, I think I've also interviewed a lot of women who have admitted they don't feel comfortable talking about their money. They have a level of shame, a discomfort. They have a thought that they should be better at it. And so it stops them. It stops them from sharing with each other. Your personal experience is that you also went through a divorce. You're a single mom. You have shaped your career as a wealth manager. How do you bring that to bear, your own personal story, when you are offering support to your clients?
This is a great question, and I'd love to elaborate on this. So when I speak, I do some public talks and I have TED Talks that I've delivered. I often start to unpack the reality of the world we live in for women. And my message underneath that is really, this is not about the intelligence. This is about the system that was never designed for us. We were never the audience. So a lot of times when I see and I work with women that sign this divorce paperwork for this asset split, and they don't even fully understand the paperwork they're signing, they're holding on to the home emotionally, where like you can see a person that works in the quantitative world, like even financial world, like private banking, right? They know what they know. They are just become very irrational when it comes to the financial aspect of their personal life. And that's where I strongly approach them to create that safe space at first. It's not about you're not knowing something, you made a mistake. It's okay. And then I also dive into the history, right? Going back to 1970s when women for first rights to education, first were allowed to open their bank accounts and first were allowed to take credit or mortgage on their own. We're talking about 1974. And that isn't even our grandmothers. This is our mothers. So it is a lot to undo. We are product of the behavior and we are where we are because of the history and because it's an uphill climb, and I strongly suggest women to view it as a perspective of like, we are earning now a lot. We are playing in this big girl sandbox. I think the same thing comes to your finances. You need to start also seen past that earning, what are these money are doing for me? Because by statistic, McKinsey research came out, said half of the women's wealth out there is sitting on the sidelines, uninvested, unoptimized, which is in fact delaying their retirement and eliminating that compounding effect, which is that's what your wealth grows as over time. And that is not okay. So we are our own worst enemies. We need to step up and do something about it. And putting a head in the sand is not a solution. Whatever was the past is a past. It's not an excuse. There are people there to help you, to walk you through this journey. So the overcoming that aspect of feeling shameful, it's a process, right? It's all about creating a safe space and then focusing on what really needs to be done to move forward.
You have worked in wealth management for a long time, and you've worked both at large firms and at boutique RIAs, and you face different challenges in each of those settings. Where have you actually seen the biggest challenges and the biggest opportunities as an advisor when you're looking for the right fit? And there's a lot of listeners to this podcast who are advisors who are growing their business and trying to recruit other advisors in. And there's also advisors who are looking for new homes. And so what advice can you give them, especially maybe for the female advisors that are listening in when they're searching for a home that feels comfortable for them or looking to grow their business?
Well, for me, it was a little different because I had a conviction. I grew up in a certain home where what molded me right from the young age. And I think it was natural for me when I was looking for that next path to seek something what I'm used to, what I'm familiar with. And what I've believed, because I've seen that work, I've seen the logic behind it, and I've seen the very smart minds who have that conviction and why they have that conviction. To me, it's very often, I don't just take the words for they are. I often challenge, why is that? Like, I want to know, for me to really be able to communicate that to my client or anybody else, I need to have my own conviction. And that's the why is important. So finding the home and really flourish, it has to sort of resemble a little bit you. And maybe often you might not know what you is about, right? What is your why? Like, why are you doing this? Like, and then that why can really lead you to the right place. You never often know by, experiencing, interviewing, or just kind of getting the culture a little bit, unless you really step into that and take your chance, right? But you have to do your due diligence as much as possible and then really make that leap, right? But if there's somewhere along the line, the due diligence, you feel like your intuition is telling you something, it is absolutely always right. Don't
What
listen
kind of
to
due
it.
diligence do you suggest? Like when you're evaluating other firms that, when you were looking and other advisors were talking to you, what do you feel were kind of the best ways that you could assess the right fit to see that it was right for you?
Well, I think talking to the advisors, really see how the level of happiness that they have within the firm. Nobody's going to be perfect, right? There are all these pros and cons, but often people become content and happy if the pros outweigh the cons, right? So you want to find the right medium. Larger firms has often better resources. There is ability to find the a la carte menu where you can pick and make your own process and stay within the larger firm to be your own small practice, sort of say, where when you step into a smaller practice, they generally like you to be very much so bind into that conviction as how they do business. And it's really, that's the conviction. And if you don't really believe in that, then that might not be the journey for you. So understanding what is that conviction is, but mostly always putting yourself in the shoes of a client. If I was a client of this firm, what would be my experience? And if that made sense for you, if that's something attracted you and you felt that was in my best benefit, that's a good start. And then there's this underneath, under the hood sort of thing where you want to see what are the processes in place within the firm. If I will be starting to get momentum and I'm going to have a long-term home in this home, how functional my role can be by scaling, by having make sure the technology is there, the experience that my client will have, all of that's sort of extremely important, especially the way the business is done this way. You want to make sure you are having good client system CRM in place where you know a lot about your clients, especially as your clientele grows, like, knowing children's name, knowing all their birthdays. You're in a people's business and personal business. You need to know a lot about people. And if you don't have those processes that can help you you to get close to your clients, then that's then investments, right? That's only the piece left as investments because you're not getting that personal glue. And that's, to me, is important.
What if financial planning wasn't just about numbers, but about you, your values, your goals, your vision for the future? Nomi is transforming client discovery for wealth managers, going beyond assets and risk scores to uncover what truly matters. With behavioral insights and real-time data, Nomi helps advisors personalize advice, build deeper connections, and grow their businesses. Because the best financial decisions start with knowing you. Discover the future of client engagement at nomi.com. Nice little opportunity here to plug Nomi as are the tools in place to really get to know your clients that will help you drive your business, recognizing that the whole business is about getting to know the client and understanding what's most important to them and showing up for them and being there when they need you. So what made Forum for you feel like the right move after 17 years at your prior firm?
Sure. I've spent a long time in the boutique family office, and it was a smaller practice. We had a $3 billion under management. Now, when I was looking for something that can give me a little bit more of like that a la carte style where I can find my own way, not to just sort of marry in another process, because at some point, when you have a tenure in this business, you want to also be a little creative, right? And I felt that Forum felt like the right fit because it combined that intellectual rigor. They have a lot of smart individuals behind the scenes that are really creating process, the conviction, the investment philosophy. And that's something that I believed if you're doing something, there has to be a rhyme and reason. And for me, I have to believe that actually it's in the best benefit of my clients. So I felt that Forum had really done a great job behind that. It's also still boutique, right? Because it's about 9 billion, so it's not a big RIA, but it's also a very important factor to me was that it was privately all owned by the partners of the firm. Because often in this space we differentiate ourselves as a fiduciary, and what truly fiduciary is when there's no silent entity between you and your client that tells you what's in the best benefit of your client. When you know your client better and you know what's in the best benefit client. And I often see a lot of large RIAs that are owned by private equity. They are saying they're fiduciary, but I find it a hard case to make when, you actually are for the profit because there is a silent entity behind you creating that profitability margin in the machine. So you're sort of like have inherited conflict of interest where we often could differentiate ourselves from the bigger broker dealers where the shareholders come first. I don't think it's any different when we're talking about private equity that owns that space. So that is really my personal opinion from the experience. But I felt Forum was a great medium. It was not big, but it wasn't small, but it also had all the processes, a lot of intellect and the intelligence behind it, and a very, very good investment team. That to me was very important because I don't want to be focusing on investments and picking them out. It has to be done by a team. The team approach has to be many people with different skill sets that they know what they're doing in constructing their portfolios. And that is what's in the best interest of the client. And that's what Forum has. And in addition to your work as a CFP and working at Forum, you also launched Hera Financial as your own firm. Tell us a little bit about what Hera is and why it's important to you. Well, Hera is my baby. It's a bit of a startup, right? I went through my own journey through a divorce 11 years ago. I've done it part-time there and really focused on full-time. And by having Hera as that consulting entity, I'm not focusing on the investment piece whatsoever. That's why it's important that I differentiate and I carve that out from my Forum financial practice. I'm focusing on really a divorce financial planning to getting individuals through that stage, regardless of, I don't even want to call it divorce. It's a life-changing practice because a lot of times it starts from the life change. And then I work with anyone who needs help through that life change. Yes, it does say a lot of it. It's about women, but men come to me often as well. It's all about what is that financial literacy piece that's missing here and how do we fill that in? And along the way, help them to get through that state of change. And once that's done, right, revisiting sort of what are we contemplating during this change? Like what are we contemplating during this divorce? How are we doing the asset split? How do we address the complexity of personal wealth that was created? How do we try to keep it in the family and not try to, shell it out for refinancing mortgages, given given it out to third parties? How do we stay within that realm of family, but split it adequately and tax efficiently? And then for women or men, if it's a neutral role that I'm playing, I often have to be mindful of that division regardless for both parties. But often for women, I'm able to shine some light to say, what are we contemplating here? How does this serve you long term? And explain them different scenarios, like what is this mean, why this is good and bad, and let them choose their path forward. So I really do help them to scaffold that change period. So hopefully later when we start becoming in an investment management, financial planning piece of work together, if they choose to, I can let it go a little bit and have them starting to get a little bit of a hang of their own finances.
If when you look back at your career, coming from kind of family office, ultra high net worth, and now working at an RIA, building Hera, focusing on people in transition, is there anything that you wish you had done earlier in your career or that you wish you had done differently altogether?
Honestly, probably not. Maybe a little bit early start my own Hera Financial, but I believe everything happens for a reason. I think there is this component of being, AI allows you to market a lot easier. I don't see myself doing that 6 years ago or even 7 years ago. I think just 3 years ago, it became a lot easier. And that is something makes my time focusing on clients a lot more versus me spending a chunk of time or even money to market myself. And that's something I probably would have been able to do, but it would just be more costly. It would be more labor intensive on my side. So it makes it a lot easier to start your business in this environment. And I think I've had so much knowledge that I've gained working in a good environment that I think I was like overripe with that I really was ready to take that with me. And I think I've probably kind of, took off at the right time where I was more than enough ready to start my own.
Yeah, you had some great foundations that you got in a really supportive setting. And I love that you referenced AI. So I'd love you to kind of fold that into this next question. What is your vision for how financial advice should evolve, especially for women, those navigating major life transitions? And if you don't mind, plug in what is the role AI is going to play? So you already referenced kind of marketing. So I imagine that's content creation and outreach. So where do you see that going? What's next?
I'm not scared of AI as much as I think some people think that it's going to replace their responsibilities. I think in my space, it's such a human relationship connection that it cannot be replaced by a robot. Yes, maybe the investment piece, but it is just so much more to it that you need to, know what you're doing. And often clients just want to be heard and understood, and in the way that it is still human to a human. I think it allows me to focus on what's most important, actually. I think it brings it up to the level where you have to be that much better, right? As to knowing your client, be in tune with a lot of changes, because a lot of other things are being sort of taken care of by technology. So you can, it's sort of like that Muslim pyramid. You're moving up on the layers where you're not doing a lot of the administrative, a lot of that minutia that takes a lot of your energy most, right? And you're really focusing on a person, and they're quantitatively, you're still mindful, but you're qualitatively really observe that relationship. And I think that's kind of where we're going with that. I think that AI is going to be very helpful in marketing. I don't know how it's going to work out in terms of the financial advising piece, but what interesting to me is we really give feedback to AI a lot in some ways of marketing. And I think it's learning from us a lot. And I like that it's becoming another Google. Like I have individuals reaching out to me from different states because they ChatGPT recommended my name. And that's because I make AI my friend when it comes to divorce, right? My marketing ideas, my newsletters, collaborate with it like it's my administrative assistant. And it knows me so intimately that when it sees someone out there that is looking for that type of help that I provide, it matches me with them. I think that's really excellent as far as matching the skills with the right provider. And that could be a great conduit for that.
What a fabulous answer. There was so much in there. So one thing I will kind of just underscore as it relates to you being on this podcast, the entire title of this podcast is Knowing Me, Knowing You. You talked a little bit about this commoditization in investing that comes with AI, the fact that the product is not going to be the differentiation. The differentiation will come from the depth of knowledge you have about your human relationship with the client, the depth of understanding and trust, and how much your client feels heard. So that was phenomenal. I'm grateful that you touched on so many important things there, and they're certainly aligned with everything that we're supporting at Nomi, what we're trying to help advisors do much more effectively, consistently at scale. Our last question here on the podcast is always, what is one instance in your life or a conversation you've had that changed your personal relationship with money?
Just one instance. I don't know if that one instance is
Your
enough.
favorite one, the one that pops up first.
Well, I would say when I was going through divorce and I was very concerned as far as my finances and how should I go forward, right? And because you're trying to juggle, you coming out of the relationship where you're interdependent financially. And my lawyer said to me, one of the best advice I always tell my clients, if you're learning and you're going to continue earning more and you're going to be promoted, it's the best thing you can do for yourself. Don't worry about the fact that you might have to pay alimony to someone. That is your life. Essentially, money is the way of freedom. It buys you things and experiences that you can experience in your life. And part of being fulfilled through the work you do, being good and continue evolving in that is that experience too. And I think for me, it was really kind of like the experience. Okay, I'm on my own. Not only I'm going to continue flourish. Okay, maybe I have to share my wealth, but I also think that's kind of the blessing if I'm able to do that. And that's what really shifted me on focusing on my own money. I started to realize I'm really going to be independent in that stage. It's not going to matter what he does. It's really what I'm going to go forward to do. And it's regardless of what it was in the marriage or what would he be doing independently with the marriage. I'm going to still build my nest egg. I'm going to, factor in anything that's going to happen with the children, with any professionals that, often people retain during divorce or even co-parenting stages. You sort of become very realistic. This is a time for you to experience that reality of the money that is going to be in your control only. And I think that's really kind of like the experience was that one conversation with an attorney saying, no, you go, girl, you make your own world, you earn as much as you can. Don't let this hinder your future success. And it almost was a permission. And I think often women like asking, well, maybe I shouldn't maybe make less, maybe I should take a different job. Like, no, you do what you want to do. Does not dictate your future earning and how you will live your life going forward.
Tatiana, thank you so much for the advice you just offered to our listeners. And thank you for sharing your personal story and all of your deep insights, a little bit more about what you've built at Hera and your relationship with Forum, what the build a business that you're now building with them. Thank you for your deep insights and how we can do better, both as advisors, as an industry, and as women who are really navigating our pretty complex relationships with money and making better decisions. Where can our listeners learn more about your work with Forum and with Hera Financial?
You can go on herafin.com where you can see a little bit my journey, my personal experience, and the advice that I give in my blog. And quite frankly, a lot of resources there for people who want to organize their finances. And at Forum Financial, you can see my bio and my journey as an advisor and my why and why I do what I do. So I would say forumfinancial.com and Herafin. Those are the two sources that can talk a lot. And I do a lot of, podcasts like that. So if you want to get a little taste of my intellectual knowledge of things and my opinions and views, they are on my website as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for offering that. Thank you for being here with our audience. For our listeners, what is one thing that you think financial advisors need to understand better about the lives of individuals in transition, the people that they're serving as they're going through big decisions and changes in the way that their relationship with money is evolving? Let us know in the comments, and please like, share, rate, comment in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube, wherever you're listening to this podcast. Share it with your friends who are financial advisors or women going through transitions so that they can also learn from this podcast like you have. Tatiana, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Marla. It's a great pleasure.
Thank you for joining us on the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Your support helps us bring more transformative conversations to you. Until next time, keep discovering, keep growing, and remember, you're in control of your own financial story. Follow us for more conversations on financial confidence, self-discovery, and the future of money.